Yes.
Okay, we are online with the College Prep English class at Excellence in Education. Let's share the screen. Let's arrange the screen first. Okay. And we'll share screen sharing it. Everything worked fine last week.
Yep.
So. Did you folks have an occasion to look at the online feed? I'm not sure whether it was my computer or the online feed that was a little bit jerky when we were watching the video through the feed.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Well, we'll have to do that and see. Normally, I don't like to watch videos in classes for interaction and so forth, but it's been suggested that that's one good way of discussing the different parts of the story. Although we're perfectly capable of reading it, so we can go ahead and do that. We have lots of As You Like It to do, and we've also got an entire chapter to go through, and there's so little in there that needed any comment. But I wanted to just treat a few issues there. Have you seen the comments on it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, most of it was just a matter of choice of words, and in some cases, just semantic confusion. All right. We are up and going. Let's shift over to our agenda.
Oh, I think that might be the agenda.
Where is the agenda?
I think that was it. The form right there. If you go up,
That's right. I have scrolled down there.
Oh, and that map, the character map, helped out a lot. It was a big help.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I don't know why this is not adjusting itself to the width of the.
There you go.
Well, we'll go ahead and do that, but it should be able to adjust to the width of the smaller screen. But as long as that continues to function over here, I think we're in good shape. Okay. Last week, as I said, we're using this new system, and it seems to be behaving just fine. And that means that our entire session is stored there on YouTube, and you can go back and view things. Submitted assignments. Let's go over there first. And here's Kyle's chapter 5 in the Project Reaper, The Awakening. Okay, the interesting thing about this story, I mean, is we still don't really know what it's all about. We don't know who they are. We don't know where it's set. It's obviously set in the rubble of some city or other, but I don't know if it's ever made clear what city it is or what caused it to be razed to the ground, or at least
that gets revealed later.
After 5 chapters of running around in it.
Well, in chapter 4, I think in chapter 4, I define what it is when they say they.
Well,
but sometimes Gracie, for example, will call them they. But it will say, if you're looking inside of one of their thoughts, it would just say undead or zombies or something else.
Oh, so we know that they're zombies. At some point that was made clear. But exactly, I mean, zombies are a mixed bag. I mean, the zombies have different characteristics depending on the oral traditions they're based on, and their abilities to think and consider and plot vary substantially from one set of zombies to another. What set of zombies are these?
The zombies that I created, they're not super smart, as you could when you have the condemned, which is a kind of a tier of it. What's people that are infected are transforming into them. The way you can tell is some of them, they have the long nails that grow out of their hands, or not nails, claws.
I saw the word condemned, and I was wondering what the distinction was.
Oh yeah, the condemned are the ones that are infected and are turning into the zombies. They slowly go crazy while they're transforming. the main thing that separates them from the zombies have very good hearing, and they don't have very good sight during the daytime. They won't show up unless there's something big that's going on. So most of the story is based around running and looting for supplies and trying to escape the city, while at night they're hiding themselves from from the massive horde that comes out.
But the zombies do talk to each other, or are those just the
condemned ones?
Talking to each other?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I noted that from last time you said that. I guess I didn't make it clear enough, so I went in and made a few changes on it, saying that they're making sure that they're the condemned, and that Ryan's looking at them and he could tell that, oh, these guys are just about close to being zombies. So that's why they're already getting hunger for human flesh later on that you see.
I see. So they haven't developed that, and they have retained their ability to communicate intelligently. Yeah. Okay. These are aspects that might be useful for your readership to know at this point. I don't know, but it can be a little confusing to expect your reader to go back and fill in the holes after something's been revealed in a later chapter. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I see.
Okay, let's look. These suggestions may have nothing whatsoever to do with the story as you have conceived it. They're just what immediately occur to me when I read through it. You talk about a cadaver as festered. It seems to me that if it has already festered and has completed that festering operation, it would no longer be of interest to crows. I don't know. I prefer to think of it as festering, and certainly much more commonly used or used as a descriptor of festering. Verb conjugation. Burst is a weird verb in that it goes through all its conjugations without changing. Today he bursts, yesterday he burst. He has burst on Fridays ever since March. You see what I mean? It's burst all the way through, and you had bursted. I looked it up and I found that there is justification for that usage, but it's
uncommon.
It's uncommon and obscure. Okay, emit is a transitive verb. You use it as an intransitive verb. I can't remember the exact context for it. Well, we'll take a look at that. Plummet. It was a matter of the semantics here. What does plummet mean?
To mean to dive or to drop.
I think plummet means more like a fall, but
it does. It means, and in this case, you were using the verb to describe what I suggested to be plunging a knife into something or other. It doesn't plummet into it unless it's fallen. You see what I mean? So I suggested plunging or impaling or something instead of plummeting.
Okay.
Saturation usually means to permeate a porous surface or a porous substance with something else. And so when you talk about somebody's face as being permeated by something, that just it seemed an inappropriate verb for that. Those are really the only kinds of problems I found in here. Very nice description, and notice there's a lot with little said at all. Never mind is normally 2 words, although there are situations in which it can be a single word, as in that makes no never mind, but that's a different kind of usage altogether. Yep.
Oh, okay. I could have sworn that I switched it. Maybe it was some weird glitch, or I accidentally pressed undo or something, because I used the quotes I put to see which one's more commonly used, and the never mind with the space is much more commonly used. So I decided to use it. Use that one. But I guess I never changed it.
Yeah, well, we'd have to look it up to be sure, but I'm sure the other one exists, but I think it's a different context altogether. And there's my suggestion to make the festering an ongoing progressive verb. Okay, don't worry, I got you. Okay, it's not strictly speaking wrong, but well, we want to assume that her level of erudition is just a little bit higher than that. Okay, and here we have a loud crashing noise emitted into the air. If we have the noise emitted, that is assuming that it can actually be an intransitive verb. The noise is emitting into the air. You see what I mean? Whereas normally it's a transitive verb. You could say something emitted the noise into the air. And so I saw no evidence of emitted being used intransitively. Okay, burst. Here we've got emergency exit, and of course we get that same old rule in the English language that all singular nouns must have an article, except for the long list of exceptions. And this is not one of the exceptions.
Oh, well, for some reason it's turned into a problem of mine I've noticed is while I'm writing, it's either the, his, her, him, or hers. I always, when I'm writing, sometimes I think I put it in there and then I check back and I realize I did not put it in there.
Mhm.
Sort of when I'm writing, I see it there, but then later on when I go over it, I realize I didn't put it in there.
Exactly.
That's probably one of the
it was
ones
in
I
your
missed.
head, but not on the page.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Scarce windows. Yeah, there are many of them. I suggest sparsely. They're not important at all. But this seemed to a little bit weak here, where it said the light that managed to find its way through them were utterly faint. And I felt that, first of all, this is singular, and so it should be was.
Oh.
And then utterly, just utterly seems to be a superlative, and therefore something adequately, which is approaching something but hasn't reached it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So it's approaching darkness, but it hasn't reached darkness. So it can't be utterly. If that, it could be utterly dark, but not utterly faint. I don't know whether that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense.
Okay. Let's see what else we've got. A large amount of items. This is a dreadful combination that I'd like you to understand. The difference between mass noun and count noun. When we use the word amount, we're generally talking about the amount of water that we have. Now, it can also apply to count nouns, but then more appropriately, one should use the number of, or the quantity of. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
instead of the amount of. You think about an amount of water, but quantity of pencils. Does that?
Yeah.
You understand the distinction there? Okay. So I suggested a collection, an array, whatever it is. The lighting was much more meager, or it was dimmer than on the second floor. I don't know. That just seemed a little awkward to me. So, meager lighting. Okay. Okay. Now I understand what you meant by condemned. So my question is answered there. This is interesting. To bleed, of course, can be used as a transitive verb. It's normally intransitive. A person bleeds. To bleed someone else is usually has to do with ancient medicinal practices of bloodletting or something like that.
I like to give the condemned typically trying to think of a good word, a messed up vocabulary, as in they would say some things that sort of don't make any sense.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense. You've got quotes around it. You're attributing it to somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about. Here's the plunge and plummet. If you're plunging a blade into something, plummeting it in doesn't work. Because for one thing, plummet is an intransitive verb. You can't plummet something. Something plummets, but you can't plummet it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Blood saturated, I suggested covered. It's rather simple. Okay, now this one is rather important. She couldn't bear to look at the ragged flesh that lied to her side. Okay.
I thought I put lay in that one. It was.
Okay.
Sometimes I just get them all confused.
What the verb you're using here is
The
lie,
past
as in
lie.
to tell a lie.
Yeah. Oh,
This
yeah,
is
I
the
see.
way, the only way that can be
Yeah.
construed is the past tense of to tell a lie. Now I lie. Yesterday I lied about it. I have lied about it. Whereas lie, I lie down today. Yesterday I lay down and I have lain down. But if I lay something down yesterday, I laid it down and have laid it down. They're two separate verbs.
Yeah.
Lie and lay. And well, we were this piece of ragged flesh was telling an untruth, apparently. Okay, and echoed into the air, echoed through the air. I thought was probably a little more appropriate. Otherwise, what you're doing is wonderful. You're demonstrating real writing ability. This is a good chapter. It's an intriguing chapter. It's well told. It carries the reader along. I think it's a great idea. I wish that this idiom, this medium, were a little bit more saleable right now. It was about 5 years ago, and so it's sort of gone downhill a little bit. Okay, let's go on to the next. Okay. As far as assignments are concerned, what you're doing is fine. I'd just like to see a few more things coming in. Have you been working on anything, Dawson?
Yeah, I think I sent one in this week.
You did?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you got it. Yeah.
Apparently not.
Yeah, but I've been kind of having problems with my computer recently.
Okay. Are you working with the new Moodle site?
I'm not sure.
I hope so, because the old one has gotten slower and slower, and I'm having trouble with my provider on supporting that one. The new one seems to be working all right. So make sure that you're in the dorm school Moodle site. Okay.
All right, okay.
Yeah. The one.
Yeah, and I did just check this morning for more submissions, and I didn't see anything. So
Okay.
let's make sure that we're putting things in the same place.
Yeah, well, I was also using Firefox, and I normally use what's called
Chrome.
no Safari usually.
Oh.
Yeah, and the whole format of Firefox was really different, and yeah, and
Have
so
you
I'm not
found
quite sure.
that Safari works well in the Moodle classroom?
Yeah.
Good, because I found that Chrome doesn't at all. I couldn't get Chrome to use the WYSIWYG menu in the editing mode at all. So that was a bit of a pain. But it's nice to hear that Safari does. So I'll perhaps recommend using that.
I always liked Mozilla Firefox. It's always been my preference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like them because they're nonprofit, so there's no ambition to get any money out of anyone. And Google Chrome's pretty good too, but I find it to be very Google centered, as in everything
Well,
is
it
Google.
has its agenda. And this is important. I mean, it's not as though Firefox is entirely without an agenda, but I regard it as a more benign agenda. They are supporting open source. They are there specifically to support an open and free internet and a secure internet. And so these are noble goals, but indeed they have an agenda. Whereas Google's agenda, I think, is more rapacious, if you'd like. Your dictionary sound. Okay, let's take a look here. We've got our as you like it. Let's just look and see what else we have. Of course, here I gave you this. It's a rather nice thing I came across some time ago. I'm not sure it's the same one. It does lay things out well. It omits a few things, and in fact, there's one omission which is mentioned in the commentary that I gave you. The scene index that I gave you was put together by someone who provides commentary, and most of it's pretty good, but he seems to miss a few things. One of which is the third brother of Orlando and Oliver, who is mentioned in the first act. And all we know is that he's off at school somewhere, and his progress has been wonderful. We know that because Orlando has been bemoaning the fact that he's not off at school and is not being taught. And so notice that he's not there at all.
Yeah,
he does indeed come in, so he should probably be there. Though he doesn't have any other relationship except to the family here. Can you think of any other people who are missing from this one?
The second Jake Lewis.
Who?
What about the
Jake
second?
the boys.
Jake Lewis, the boys. Yeah.
Right. That's the one I was talking about. The third brother between Oliver and Orlando. Yeah.
Also, I think that's misspelled. It says Silvius. It's Silvus.
You're absolutely right. Silvus. Okay, I didn't notice that.
Isn't Audrey? Is Audrey? Oh no, Audrey's there.
Audrey is over
Audrey
here on the left, together with William. The others are relatively minor, and they don't necessarily have an important relationship with things. But the odd thing about Shakespeare is that he had no compunction about suddenly introducing brand new characters at the very end of the story, or randomly for no particular reason at various different times. Osric, for example, in Hamlet. What is Osric suddenly doing here? We never heard of him before. And he comes and invites Hamlet to this duel and so forth. We've got some odd, in fact, we've got some Deus Ex Machina, which appears at the end for no particular reason, is very difficult to explain. But we've got a few others who are missing. Charles is missing. Not terribly important. What's his name? Dubois is missing.
The messenger, right? Dubois.
Right. Now he was an interesting character, and in fact, rather a noble character, having spoken out against the Duke for whom he works, and so and he gave them a heads up on what was taking place in the court. So that was a nice thing to know of. And we've also got Sir Oliver Martext. I mean, it seems odd to give this character a title and personality when it just goes nowhere at all and just sits there. And he indeed is given a personality, as Sir Oliver Martext. But it's an interesting scene, and again, it's an opportunity to weave together the characters. You've got all these people running around the forest, meeting in various different combinations. We've got the shepherds, and the shepherd and the shepherdesses, and they are. Corin is entirely resigned to his state as a poor shepherd. You know, who calls? You're better, sir. Else are they very wretched. You know, he's perfectly accepting of his surroundings and so forth. But he's also he has had his background, as is revealed when he discusses love with Silvius. Then we have Phoebe. Now, Phoebe's not a really important character, but she's an interesting one. My daughter was fascinated by the character of Phoebe and insisted on learning all of her lines. This was my older daughter when she was 5 years old. She wanted to just get all of Phoebe down. And so, okay, well, Phoebe's an interesting character. What is specifically interesting about Phoebe?
I'd say it's kind of strange the way she loves.
Right. It's indeed her words, which seem in fact to apply to just about everybody in the whole story, is and I see your soul of might, speaking to Silvius. I see your soul of might, whoever loved who loved not at first sight. And indeed, all of the cases of love in this story are love at first sight. There's Rosalind and Orlando. Who else?
Touchstone and
Audrey
Audrey.
and Touchstone.
Audrey and Touchstone, we don't actually see it
Yeah,
happen,
but you
you're-
would
you're right.
you would
I'm
imply
assuming
that they
though.
do.
Where did Audrey come
I think
from?
we also have to conclude that he's not really in love with her, he's in lust with her. This is a bit of a distinction because he's not expecting this marriage to last.
Oh, you're right. That's
he
why.
made
That's why
that
you
clear
got the,
to Jake
priest,
Weiss.
yeah.
Exactly. Okay, we've got another one now.
Oh yeah.
No sooner did they see
Celia and Oliver.
exactly Celia and Oliver, and this, of course, leads one to another massive sea of incredulity. Really, when you think about it, is these utterly arrogant and acrimonious characters, the Duke Frederick and Oliver, are just horrible people from the very beginning for no reason that we can understand. And then they have a
They just
complete
change.
change of heart for no reason that we can understand. So, I mean, there are little parts of this play that are sort of peculiar. We've got all of these. Touchstone is a fascinating character. So often your fool is the rock solid voice of reason behind what's going on in the rest of the play. It's certainly the case in Twelfth Night, for example. Whereas in this case, Touchstone, well, he has his needs, and he's off there philandering with Audrey in the forest.
You know, like the part where he's talking to Shepard. How do you like the Shepard life? I quite enjoy it. So he keeps bringing points. I like it, but then I don't like it. I like
Right.
it.
In the
Yeah.
perspective of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was trying to count how many times he did, but I don't remember the number. How many times he kept saying, "Oh, well, I do like it,
Respect to it.
In
but
respect
yeah,
that
in
it's,
respect to this."
is
Yeah.
private, but in respect that it's a lonely life, it isn't. Right. Okay. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And this is I think, really one of the core elements of this entire play is the fascination that people have for ideas and for people who have ideas. The banished Duke, for example, values Jake greatly. I mean, he enjoys having him around. He hates to see him go at the end when he decides to go off somewhere else altogether. And whenever he's in one of these fits of melancholy, he loves to get a chance to talk with him then, because then he's full of matter, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's an appreciation for that. And then Jake, for his part, feels in perhaps the same kind of reverence for Touchstone when he meets a motley fool in the forest, and he's just so taken by this fool and what he says. You know, an appreciation for ideas, an appreciation for that sort of thing. And I obviously it's something that Shakespeare himself appreciated a great deal.
I found it quite funny how in the end he decided to go to a monastery and live a religious life when he's so as everyone puts it, a melancholy fellow.
Yeah, this is an odd one because indeed Jaques, upon hearing of the banished Duke's conversion, an utterly incomprehensible conversion when you think about everything that banished Duke has said in the past. He's really a vicious character, but suddenly he meets an old religious man and he's converted from life and leaves the dukedom to his brother again. Okay, it's just an interesting justification for this, for everything coming together nicely at the end. And then when hearing this, when he hears this, Jake says, "Oh, I've got to go to him and see what this is all about." That's an interesting response, and indeed a fascinating one. No, it's a beautiful play. It brings up so many interesting ideas and has been done so many hundreds of thousands of times in different contexts. And you look around on the net, you'll find dozens of versions. There's one out there of Katharine Hepburn playing Rosalind, and the one that I gave you, I didn't bother to give you more than one simply because that one is so awfully good, but there are others. There's another one out there, set in Japan, with Brian Blessed as the Duke. And Orlando is played by a black actor. It's a very odd thing, but it's all there, and it's all there in the appropriate way. Okay, quotes to identify. I'm sure you've looked at these, and I'm sure you know what they're all about. I just went through it, arbitrarily choosing bits that I thought might be of significance. So let's go through it.
This is the more pity the fools may not speak.
May not speak wisely what wise men do foolishly. Yes. Who could possibly say that but a fool, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the interesting things is the rhetorical device used here, and that rhetorical device has a couple of names. One is epinodos, that is taking two objects in sequence and then reversing their order in the following phrase. So the example I give is Britannia rules the waves, but never waves the rules. It's sort of just a clever little thing. And here we have the same idea. Well, the pity that fools may not speak wisely, what wise men do foolishly. Same concept, reversing around it. It has a ring in the ear. If I be foiled, there is but one shamed who was never gracious. If killed, but one dead who was willing to be so.
Orlando.
Exactly. He is despondent. He sees no purpose in life. And so he's decided to go up against this wrestler. It's also an odd choice to make, but it works for our plot purposes, I guess. And exactly how he manages to best this wrestler is done differently in every stage production you've seen. This one's rather a simple solution, but there are others. What a wonderful metaphor this next one is. What passion hangs these weights upon my tongue?
Orlando as well. After
I like the way that part was. Yeah,
after he sees,
he was silent. He
sees,
doesn't speak, and then she comes up to him again.
Conference.
Yeah,
and yeah, I could not say anything.
And then she comes again.
Then she comes again and he speaks. What say you? He just.
But then, of course, this sets the stage for some wonderful things to go on. Basically, he has fallen thoroughly for her, and she for him. And but then when she meets him in disguise, she strings him along, and does it so artfully. All the way, it's very clever. It's impossible to believe that somebody would be so thoroughly taken in by that, especially when he met her, Rosalind and Celia, together, and then sees Rosalind and Celia together later on. It doesn't tumble to he doesn't tumble to the fact that it's indeed the same pair. But, oh well, we have to shelve our.
Yeah, that's what I was saying when I was watching. It's like, wow, I would have known immediately. Maybe not immediately, but maybe after a while, I would have said, "Oh wait, that must be Rosalind because that's Celia."
Right. Exactly, and that's what would really bring it home, because indeed the costume was really a defining element in what people were. Their hair was not visible, for example, with those hats they were wearing. I don't even know what they were called, but it was terribly elaborate headgear that Rosalind and Celia wore at the very beginning when they were in court. And indeed, I suppose that might make them difficult to recognize, were they to appear in different habiliments. But indeed, the fact that they were together would make all the difference, it would seem. Okay. Oh, yes. And Rosalind is in shock, in a sense. She says, but is all this for your father? No, some of it is for child's father. So she knows exactly where she's going, what she wants. within these 10 days, if that thou beest found so near our public court as 20 miles, thou diest for it.
Duke Frederick
Right.
banishing,
Duke Frederick.
banishing
Indeed.
Rosalind.
And thou beest found. Isn't that interesting use? It's
Just like
subjunctive
dice,
use.
yeah.
And unfortunately, it's been adopted by Renaissance fair people as an indication of how the verb to be should be used all the time. So they use nothing but be instead of is and are. And this is wrong. It's used specifically when it needs to be a subjunctive voice. And in this case, it's hard to justify the subjunctive voice, but I think clearly it has to be there. If thou art, of course, would be the normal conjugation for the verb. If thou art found. But since it's if thou beest, what happens there is it's a situation contrary to fact, or at least it's inside an if. If thou beest here, you see, when there's doubt about the veracity of something, the validity of something, then you throw it into that subjunctive one. If he be her brother, do you see what I mean? I forget which chapter that's in the book. We're going to deal with that at some point. Okay, a gallant curtal axe upon my thigh, a boar spear in my hand.
So she's
Rosalind.
Yeah.
Rosalind
Saying, I would
deciding
dress
to
up
be
like a man, yeah.
Ganymede.
Exactly. She's decided to dress up like a man for fear of two ladies going off together into the wilderness. And then they decide to bring a man along as well anyway.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting combination again.
Well, perhaps they didn't want they still needed someone to have an axe and a spear, and they didn't want the fool to carry it.
I suppose.
Because if you're a thief, you wouldn't be
Yeah.
threatened by a fool.
Especially if he comes in costume, as indeed he does. You are aware that there's a financial periodical called The Motley Fool. It's a major magazine on the stock markets. Obviously, it comes from Shakespeare. Shakespeare's phrases like that have been borrowed and put all over the place. Okay. Now we go in content to liberty and not to banishment.
Celia. It's Celia. After they figure out their names.
Exactly. Okay, and you know this one, of course, because we did this one before. Sweet are the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, who has yet a precious jewel in its head. And this, our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything.
Duke Senior.
And indeed, he is being wonderfully poetic here, isn't he? But the poetry he's putting together is not rhymed poetry as such, but it is alliterative. Look at those wonderful alliterations. Tongues in trees, books in brooks, sermons in stones. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, and who goes, oh, Phoebe?
Sylvius.
Yes, Sylvius spelled with an I. Okay, and so what's going on with Sylvius and Phoebe? It's fairly straightforward.
Sylvius loves Phoebe. Phoebe's a little annoyed by his frequent confessions of his love.
Professions,
Right.
yes. Professions.
Or professions.
Yeah, professions,
Very good,
that's the word I
very
good. Professions.
And
And
she's a bit disdainful. You know? Yeah, very good. And the thing is, she ends up being disdainful, and even to the point where she ends up doing exactly, or she disparages exactly what she the next moment ends up doing herself. And that immediate turnaround, I think, is a fascinating concept in this one. Okay. Who calls your better, sir? Else are they very wretched. You know what's going on here, right?
They're talking to the old shepherd.
It is the old shepherd, indeed, who answers here. And he says, who calls? And who says your better, sir?
Isn't it Touchstone?
It is indeed Touchstone. Touchstone is, I mean, he's a bit forward and not reticent to say exactly what he feels. Okay, and then we have a number of things happen there. Specifically, we have the meeting between Orlando and the banished Duke, and Adam is dying want in the forest, and they reconcile. I just sort of skipped that. I didn't see a great deal that he said in there. But who says this sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything?
Jaquius.
Jaquius, yeah.
Jaquius. And that
Jaquius is one of my favorite characters in the entire
he is a favorite character. I mean, really,
he's probably the best character.
He's very self-consciously melancholy.
Yeah, he reminded me of Marvin.
That's a good
reminded me of
point.
Marvin.
I think one has to realize that Marvin is not necessarily putting it on. Marvin is really depressed.
Yeah.
Which was it? We learned that when he shoots the Vogons with the perspective gun, and they all become depressed. I mean, but it's not clear that Jaquius is really depressed, nor is he necessarily melancholy, but he uses melancholy as sort of a watchword, as a definition.
Yeah, remember that's
of
what
his
he was saying.
personality.
It's a different kind of melancholy.
Yeah.
Right.
An invention of mine own, yeah.
Beautifully noted. Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's not the melancholy of, I forget what the others were.
Yeah, he mentions
He
three of them
mentioned
and says,
a few.
and the melancholy of a lover, which is all of,
Right,
all
which
the
He
is
ones.
mentioned about
fantastical,
3, then
yeah.
he says the lover, which is all of these. One of them's a soldier,
Yeah, right,
a
soldier.
lawyer, which is politics.
Yeah.
And a few others.
I remember it, yeah.
Excellent. You folks really have got it down. Okay, now this, I think this reminds one so much of modern rap in a way, because what is rap? It's intentionally rhymed material, but in many instances it's improvisatory. Can you make up rhymed material off the top of your head? And that's really what it's all about. But,
Yeah.
Well, a fool can do that. A fool is a master at doing that sort of thing. And here he demonstrates it off the top of his head, of course, in theory.
It's his mockery
we-
of the
Yeah.
letters.
Exactly. They found all of these terrible verses pinned to non-existent trees. You don't have any palm trees in Warwickshire. I mean, that doesn't happen. It's interesting. You just, well, let's have a palm tree here. I found this on a palm tree, and then that they've discovered. We have that wonderful scene that we saw before, in which Rosalind and Celia are talking, and Celia intimates that the one who pinned all of these love poems on the trees is in fact Orlando, but Rosalind insists on her actually saying it and refuses to believe it. And of course, this is exactly what she wants, and she just, what a tree is this that bears such fruit? Yeah. Okay. So here, Touchstone comes along with a little more perspective and a little bit of contempt for these things. And indeed, he has that interchange with Orlando himself, in which he says, no more of our trees,
Yeah.
carving love songs into it. mar no more of my poems by reading them ill-favoredly.
Yeah, that was before we get
And then it
that.
goes,
I bid thee farewell, Signor Love, and adieu,
adieu,
Monsieur
Monsieur
Melancholy.
Let us meet as little as we can. Exactly. No, that's a wonderful interaction, isn't it? I love that. They get together and they are exchanging these barbs at each other. And I do wish we could be better strangers. And so I would as lief be myself alone. And yet they're enjoying it, and then Jake was at one point says, "Hey, come on, sit down with me, and let's rail against the world,
rail against our miseries."
So if a heart do lack a hind, let him seek out Rosaline. If the cat will after kind, so be sure will Rosaline. Wintered garments must be lined, so must slender Rosaline. They that reap must sheep and bind, then to cart with Rosaline. Sweetest nut hath sourest rind, such a nut is Rosaline. He that sweeteth rose will find, must find love's prick and Rosaline. Notice there is not one syllable out of place. This is absolutely perfect verse, absolutely perfectly constructed. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the meter of this?
Iambic pentameter.
Isn't it?
I'm not sure it's iambic. If
Oh.
a heart do lack a hind,
It's a ballad.
it's
isn't it?
trochaic,
Oh,
Okay.
which is simply the opposite of iambic. Instead of ta-da, 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 it's ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. At least it starts that way. But there are trochaic lines throughout. So must slender Rosaline, they that reap must cheap. It is trochaic. It's trochaic tetrameter in couplets. That's what we'd have to say. Now, when you're writing something like this, of course, what you need to do is make sure that what you're rhyming with simply is well represented as far as rhymes is concerned. In this case, eind is what we're working with. And there is just a vast swatch of words that would rhyme comfortably with eind. Now, that's what makes this kind of improvisatory poetry possible. The fact that there are strings of words that all rhyme with each other comfortably. But Touchstone is demonstrating that, okay, Orlando's in love, he's putting his whole heart into this, but fact is a fool can do better. Oh yes, I heard them all, and more too, for some of them had more feet than the verses would bear.
isn't that
Celia.
Rosaline?
No, that
I
was
think it's Celia.
It was Celia because Rosalind said, "Did you read these?" And then
Yeah,
because she was
Oh,
saying, "Oh,
yeah,
and
yeah.
more too," because
I'm
you know
sorry.
she was saying how Touchstone gave her that.
exactly. Now, Touchstone, every foot is in exactly the right place with not one extraneous or missing syllable. Whereas the original ones were apparently a bit sloppy. Is it a man and a chain you once wore about his neck? Okay, so we the audience now knows that Celia has made it clear, but Rosalind still goes through this elaborate. Demanding, importuning that Celia come right out and tell her, who is this who's been writing these things and about who? And a chain you once wore about his neck, which indeed she has to know who it is because she had taken the chain off and gave it to him after the wrestling match, saying that she would give more if she had means. Okay. Oh yes. So here these are. God by you, let's meet as little as we can. I do desire we may be better strangers. Okay, we know exactly what's going on there. You have a nimble wit. I think 'twas made of Atlanta's heels. Will you sit down with me, and we two will rail against our mistress the world, and all our misery? Okay, you know exactly what's going on there. Your accent is something finer than you could purchase in so removed a dwelling.
Isn't this I forgot his name again? The old shepherd talking to Rosalind, or was Rosalind?
Isn't it?
Wait, no, I thought it was
Orlando?
Oh
yeah, it was Orlando who mentioned it
yes.
to Rosalind.
Yeah. And indeed,
She
this
said, "Oh,
this
my
is
father was
something.
a poet or something, or her father was a
She was raised by an old religious.
old
man.
religious
Yeah.
man." Yeah.
This is something that is such a core, really, of English tradition and English literature, is the fact that everyone, um, especially in the British Isles, is definable by their
By their
pronunciation.
accent.
Like there's
And-
still a few accents in Britain that go about. Wasn't there a? There are two main ones in Britain, right? There's
There's
the
so
regular,
many. I'm not sure.
and
which
then
one.
I don't remember what it's called, but it was the one that the poor people spoke. I think it was just.
Cockney.
Is that the
Well,
one?
that's just it. You're right. Cockney is.
Yeah, I think
is
that might
indeed
be it.
one of them, but it's not just one
Yeah.
accent. The thing is, there were regional accents for just about everywhere. At one point in Pygmalion, Bernard Shaw has his Professor Higgins claimed to be able to distinguish someone within 2 miles anywhere in England, within London, within 2 streets. Now, this shows how much a difference there actually was, and how little travel really took place when you think about it, because indeed it would have to have been.
Yeah, because no one goes to the dude have to be
There.
secluded within their little zone.
Yeah, exactly. And so a very distinct definition for the lower classes. Now, this doesn't apply to Shakespeare because it happened later on, but an effort was made during the 19th century to come up with a standard pronunciation that would not be condemned as laughable by other people from elsewhere. And this standard pronunciation was needed in order to establish the warrior class, specifically the soldiery, and also the civil servants were all expected to speak something that did not reveal their geographical origins. And this ended up being what was taught in schools. And if you didn't learn it in school, you took elocution lessons. And elocution lessons were a standard thing for anyone who had achieved a certain level of opulence to take, because then they could separate themselves from their lowly origins or their geographic origins and join this sort of standard language, which didn't define where you came from. It defined only the fact that you were well educated. And it was oddly called, a lot of people tend to refer to it as a BBC accent because BBC relied on it heavily for a long time. Not recently. They've decided to have all kinds of regional accents now. But it was called received pronunciation.
So are there still as many accents today as there are?
There really are, but of course we have much more of a melting pot because of this communication.
Yeah.
We didn't, at the time, Shakespeare's time, there wasn't any communication from one place to another. So indeed, accents tended to be very localized. But now, of course, we've got the BBC accent, which was the major, I mean, BBC wasn't that old, but it was the major accent for about 100 years and the standard for all of the military and the upper classes. But then you've still got those little regional dialects. Now, did you watch Fry's Planet Word? I think it was more listening because that was an audio.
I haven't finished it yet. I
Okay.
just started. But yeah, you were talking about that last time, how he went through the British Isles imitating all of the accents.
Imitating a few
Or
of
a
them
few,
in one little
yeah.
place. Yeah. He actually just went through Yorkshire, talking about the different accents within Yorkshire, little Leeds and Hull and all of that. Anyway, yeah, it was at the one end you have accents that specifically define your class and your geographical location. At the other end, and that was the purpose of that particular accent, which was drawn from that of the home counties, the ones specifically around London, but the educated classes, which became divorced from class, and or at least above class, and divorced from geographic connections. Okay, so indeed, Orlando listens to her saying, "You're not a country girl. Your accent is something far too refined for that." Okay, then, "Oh, dear Phoebe, if ever, as ever may be near, you meet in some fresh cheek the power of fancy, then shall you know the wounds invisible that love's keen arrows make."
Sylvius.
What a wonderful thing to come out of the voice of a shepherd. It's beautifully put, but this is very prescient, isn't it? It's vaticinal, it's mantic. Shall we pull out the dictionary? It's prophetic. He is actually saying what's just about to happen to her a moment later on. Okay. "But till that time," responds Phoebe, "but till that time, come thou not near me. And when that time comes, afflict me with thy mocks, pity me not, as till that time I shall not pity thee." Isn't this? Did you catch that when you noticed it first come through? It's absolutely wonderful, because he is foretelling what's going to happen, and she's saying, "I don't care if it does happen, and if it does, go ahead and mock me the way I'm mocking you." And then, of course, indeed,
It did.
Yeah.
And then, who says this? I'm sorry. "For I must tell you friendly in your ear, sell when you can. You are not for all markets."
Rosalind.
That's
She
Rosalind
says that
telling
to
Phoebe.
Exactly. Rosalind telling Phoebe. What a put down. "Sell when you can. You are not for all markets." And then Phoebe, of course, has become thoroughly enamored of Ganymede, and she is in this state of shocks, and what she says there just turns everything around. "Dead shepherd, now I find thy saw of might. Whoever loved that loved not at first sight." What is a saw in this particular case? The word is used twice in As You Like It. Can you remember where the other occasion is?
No.
Okay. You have been doing your study wonderfully, and you have a terrific grasp of it. So I just thought you might have caught that. It's actually in the 7 Ages of Man, when they talk about the justice full of wise saws and instances. A saw
Sights.
being a pithy epithet, an insightful saying. Okay, and so "Dead shepherd, now I find thy saw of might. Whoever loved, who loved not as first." And finally, she understands what he's going through. She leads it in a different direction. Okay, now under what circumstances does who say this to whom?
Isn't it Celia to Rosalind?
Yes, and why?
This is after.
This is just a little bit after the scene right before it. This is after the scene where she was talking to Sylvius and
wait, wasn't she
It's
talking?
specifically Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando. She was speaking to Orlando at the tree, and so after the one where he said, "Okay, I'll come back," and she starts wrangling him, just saying, I came only an hour before my promised time."
Right.
After that, she says that to him.
How could you really be in love? An hour, and indeed, she ends up being terribly capricious. What's capricious?
isn't it consistent?
Well, inconsistent.
Well, that's what I meant. Right.
Right. Yeah. She is inconsistent. She is flighty. She is fickle, and she is intentionally testing him. She's saying, "Oh, but your Rosalind will be, you know, disdainful one moment, and then in a more coming on disposition." And she plays all these roles, and Orlando passes the test, so to speak. He's still in love with her, even though Rosalind, as Ganymede, is showing him all of the things that Rosalind might do that would put him off and be inconsiderate and even rancorous and acrimonious. But he's willing to put up with all of it. And you have to realize that here she's in love with him as much as he is with her, and she is stringing him along here. And then Celia is watching all of this, and so her response: "You have simply misused our sex in your love trait," because she has indeed insulted the female sex, as pretending to be a man. She said, and she'll do all of these unexpected and inconsiderate things. She will be capricious. Okay, this is beautiful. That blind, rascally boy that abuses everyone else's eyes because his own are out. Let him judge how deep I am in love.
That's Roseline.
Right. And who is the boy?
It's the son of the I think the son of the goddess. I forgot the name.
I don't know who it was, but I would guess Cupid, maybe.
It is indeed Cupid.
Yeah, that's it, Cupid.
Now remember the line in Romeo and Juliet.
By the blind boys, butt
Good
shaft.
for you, right?
So that's why I thought.
Twain by the blind boys butt shaft. Excellent, good for you. Right.
That was Mercutio saying.
Exactly. Very good.
With his going on about dreams, right?
No, this was saying.
Oh wait, you're right.
The duel. And he's saying,
duel.
"Oh, but poor Romeo's already dead." You know.
Yeah.
Good for you, folks. You're really getting it down well. It's nice. So the blind, rascally boy that abuses everyone else's eyes. What a wonderful way to describe love. And who says, "Art thou God to shepherds turned, that a maiden's heart hath burned"? Who says that?
Oh, that's Phoebe, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
It is indeed. And under what circumstances?
This is when she's after.
Oh, this is the
She's talking
letter.
about-
That's right.
The letter.
That's right.
The letter that she writes to Ganymede.
Exactly. She writes the letter to Ganymede, sends it by way of
Sylvius.
Sylvius. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
she reads it to him.
Rosalind picks it up and she says, "How does she rail this?" Okay, and so he reads that out, and then the next line there: "Can a woman rail thus?" This is indeed what Rosalind is saying, and Sylvia says, "Call this railing?" Okay, you understand the word railing. It's a wonderful verb. Yeah, put it in your active vocabulary. It'll confuse your families for a while, but see what you can do with that. Okay. Will the faithful offer take of me, and all that I can make, or else by him my love deny, and then I'll study how to die. Beautifully constructed. But again, this king comes out of the mouth of the shepherd. So, right, that's Phoebe. And indeed, Phoebe has caught the plague, much as Sylvius had it previously. And indeed, whence comes that reference to catch the plague when used in reference to falling in love? How quickly may one catch the plague? You know it.
Cupid being struck.
No. Lady Olivia, after talking with Cesario
Which
in Twelfth Night.
we've never done.
We
12
haven't done
night.
12th Night. I'm sorry.
No,
No,
I thought we had.
I have no
Uh,
idea what
I
you're saying.
apologize.
I think we did that last year.
Yeah.
That might have been why. Yeah, 'cause I was thinking.
I apologize. I was expecting you to have that on top of your head. Thank you, Dawson.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, twice did he turn his back and purposed so, but kindness, nobler even than revenge, and nature, stronger than his just occasion, made him give battle to the lioness.
Oliver describing,
Right,
what his brother Orlando did.
Orlando did. Yeah.
Right, and beautifully explained too, when he says, twice did he turn his back and purposed so, to leave this horrible brother to the lioness, but kindness, nobler than revenge, and nature, stronger than his just occasion. And indeed, Oliver regards his occasion as he could have justly left him to the lion, as he's saying there, but nature, stronger than his just occasion. His nature is indeed noble, and defined his attitude and approach at that point. Made him give battle to the lioness. Now, we've got palm trees and a lioness in this forest of Arden.
When I heard them say lioness, I mean snake I could believe, but a lioness I thought that's a little strange. You won't find lions in a forest, or
That's a
at
good
least
point.
not a forest.
Not in
in
a
the
temperate
play.
forest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed, and it makes no sense at all in the forest of Arden. I mean,
Yeah.
this was right.
But neither did a
to
palm tree.
Shakespeare's home counties. I'm sorry.
But neither did a palm
Neither
tree.
do they
Yeah.
palm trees. And indeed, if you've ever seen what happens to our palm trees when we do have a frost, you'd understand why. Okay, so indeed, we have Oliver making such a total turnaround. And again, it's hard to understand exactly how or why. Although he has fallen on hard times, he's been kicked out by the by Duke Frederick and so forth. So I suppose that may have changed his perspective on things. We don't know why he was so mean to begin with. A number of Shakespeare's villains are villainous for no particular reason. Don John, for example, we really don't know why he is what he is or does what he does, but at least he remains consistent. That's in Much Ado About Nothing. Have you read Much Ado About Nothing?
This one, at least, they even mention it.
Yeah.
Duke Frederick says to himself, "I do not know why. For I do not know why my soul hates."
It's
Orlando.
Oliver who says
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oliver.
Very good, very good. You really managed to remember these. Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about Much Ado About Nothing afterwards and see if that's something that you would like to go on and look at. We didn't do that one last year, did we?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's talk about it and see if it inspires you. It's one of his great. Well, they're all great. No, I won't say that. The ones that nobody ever does are not that great. But everybody does As You Like It every year or two, and Twelfth Night, and it's not that common to see Love's Labour's Lost or Cymbeline or Timon of Athens. There are a number of other plays that don't quite come up to that level, but the ones that do there's quite a number of them. Okay, see if we. Okay, this was not counterfeit. There is too great testimony in your complexion that it was a passion of earnest.
That's Oliver to Rosalind.
commenting on Rosalind's
How she fainted.
fainting.
Faded right
Right.
there. And she said, "Oh, see how I counterfeit?" He said, "That's not counterfeit. You're basically saying your face is so pale, your face is pale, it gives it away. It's too much testimony to your complexion.
Excellent testimony of your complexion. Beautifully done. Yeah, this is an interesting point because he's basing his conclusion on her pallor or lack of same. But indeed, in Hamlet, we saw exactly the opposite taking place when the player is talking about the trials and tribulations of Hecuba, and you can see his face go wan and pallid. And of course, here we're talking about an actor on the stage able to produce that kind of. They must have had some amazing actors back then. They really must have. So, indeed, Oliver sees through this complexion and says, "No, I can see this was real. You weren't just counterfeiting." Now, who says this is possible? That on so little acquaintance you should like her, but that seeing you should love her, and loving woo, and wooing she should grant. And will you persevere to enjoy her? Who says this?
Say Rosalind.
Yeah.
Rosalind to Orlando. Is it Orlando or?
I think this is Celia. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is to Oliver.
Okay.
I was
gonna
Yeah,
say,
you're
I'm
right,
either
you're right.
debating between Oliver, as in Oliver talking to Orlando, or I was gonna say it might have been
I think
Jake
it
Lee
is
is
Oliver
talking to.
Orlando. I think you're absolutely
Oh,
right.
okay.
Oh, you're right. You're right. This is where they're both lying down saying, "Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Say it with me. I love Aliena.
yes."
Right. And these two, of course, who were just at their throat, well, literally at each other's throats. And Orlando having got him in a headlock or something in the first scene. This is a complete turnaround again. And indeed, here it's further described. For your brother and my sister no sooner met than they looked. No sooner looked, but they loved. No sooner loved, but they sighed. No sooner sighed, but they asked one another the reason. No sooner knew the
that
reason,
one.
but they sought the remedy. And in these degrees have they made a pair of stairs to marriage, which they will claim.
That was Rosalind.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. That one
Orlando.
has to be, of course, because she's talking about her sister. Okay. Why then, tomorrow I cannot serve your turn for Rosalind.
Isn't that Rosalind talking to Orlando?
Exactly.
Orlando, yeah.
Yes.
The Orlando responds, "I can live no longer by thinking."
Good for you. Exactly. I can live no longer by thinking. So Rosalind is saying, okay, the jig is up. This is the end of the game. We've got to have a denouement. What is a denouement?
Isn't it a revealing or unveiling?
Absolutely, exactly. That the conclusion of a play in which everyone gets an opportunity to learn what's really been going on all this time. But she's decided that she's going to do it in a very dramatic way, for which she needs the presence of a god, and somehow manages to persuade one to come. That this is a little hard to understand, but indeed that's the way Shakespeare decided to do it. I can live no longer by thinking. Oh yes, we have this wonderful bit of everybody loving each other.
That's probably one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah,
Isn't
I
there? I'll
like
say
that part. Yeah.
it is. When he's talking, that's Rosalind talking to Silvius. Tell this youth what 'tis to love. And then he says something which I feel for
Phoebe.
for Phoebe,
Which I feel
for Ganymede, which then,
Which I feel
which
for.
I feel
no
for
woman.
Rosalind.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And then she
Orlando
says, which I feel for no
Rosalind.
woman.
It's what I
Oh,
feel for
sighs, yeah.
no woman. Then looking at
Yeah, and then it goes
Excellent.
on another time.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, yes. And here, this is interesting also because after all, they went into the Forest of Arden to seek Rosalind's father, the vanished Duke. But having met him, she doesn't reveal who she is. He asks who she is or what her parentage is, and she
Equal
says,
as his.
exactly, as good as his, and then takes her leave. That's interesting. She decides to maintain this persona. Okay, so finally, when she does appear in woman's weeds, as is described in Twelfth Night, if there be truth in sight, you are my daughter. If there be truth in sight, you are my Rosalind.
That's Duke Senior and Orlando.
Excellent, excellent, exactly right. I will not eat my word, now thou art mine. Thy faith, my fancy, to thee doth combine.
It's Phoebe.
Beautifully put, isn't it? And it's a little hard for to understand again her motivations behind going along with this wager and this agreement, but then that's why Rosalind put the agreement together that way, I think. Okay, and now, if I heard you rightly, the Duke hath put on a religious life and thrown into neglect the pompous court.
Jaqueus.
Aqueous. And then he responds, yes, he hath. And then I think he responds, as he did, so will I, or something.
Okay, I will. I can't remember exactly what the words are any better than that. So, yeah, and indeed, Jaques leaves, and the Duke is rather put out about this. The
Yeah.
Duke loves to have this melancholy Jaques spouting his peculiar truisms all over the place. And this is a wonderful idea. So we have so many of these combinations of characters meeting. We've got Touchstone talking to Corin, whom I didn't even have in here. And then Jaques talking to Touchstone. Touchstone, indeed, when Touchstone is wants to marry Audrey.
Saying,
It's an interesting combination, this Touchstone and Audrey.
where did Audrey come from?
Oh, she's
She just appeared.
rustic, as far as
Just
we know.
another person that was in the forest.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she is a rustic, and a rustic who was being wooed by this William, who is not terribly interested in anything particular. And Touchstone manages to put him down thoroughly, and it has nothing to do with anything else in the plot. So it's just sort of off on its own. But indeed, Touchstone decides to marry Audrey and gets this Sir Oliver Martax to come along and perform the ceremony. But I cannot perform the ceremony. Who is to give the lady?
To give the lady.
I will not take her on gift of any man. Of course, this is a very cool response. But no, somebody must give her. And
So that he,
sure enough, Jaques is standing
I'll do
behind.
it.
Here, I'll give her. A wonderful concept of these different combinations of people coming together.
It reminded me, I've read a little bit of Sherlock Holmes. There's on the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. There's the first story, or I think it's the first one, called "Scandal in Bohemia," where he's following this girl, and then they want to get married, and the priest goes, "Well, we need a witness, you know." So we need a witness, and then Sherlock Holmes just happens to be there, and then they grab him and pull him in. It kind of reminds me of that situation.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have that sort of thing. Now, has anybody prepared any recitations from this thing?
I was gonna do the stage, the life is a play with Jaques.
Okay, by all means, let's do that and find it. Okay, is that?
Yeah.
That's not very clear, is it? Let me see if I can fix that a little bit. Now, on the YouTube, boy, I can't see it at the same
Here,
time.
you need me to.
On the YouTube version, it does end up being quite
Right there, yeah.
quite sharp, but you have to tell it to go into the high resolution mode.
Yeah.
Okay, can you read that?
Yeah. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his act being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy, with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good cap and lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th stage shifts into the lean and slipped pantaloon.
Slippered.
Oh, slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk's shank, and his big manly voice, turning again toward childish treble pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this stage, even full
This
history,
strange.
is second childness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
Beautiful. Very, very nicely done. This is such a remarkable thing, and it's really quite insightful too. It tells you a good deal about the period and the way Shakespeare looked upon different people. I find the schoolboy is one of the most interesting parts of it. I mean, we think of this the browbeaten school children as being a fairly recent development, but no, they slogged their way unwillingly to school even back then in the 17th century.
That's what I thought was interesting. I thought, I said, huh, interesting. I never thought that. I never pictured school. Yeah, school kids in Shakespeare's time, mewling on, dragging themselves to school, saying, "Oh, I don't want to learn." You know,
The earliest I would think
that was
of
more
is
modern.
1800s.
Yeah, more. Of a,
I think in a way you're right. In general, it tends to be more modern. Certainly, they must have had amazing schools. And where did Shakespeare study? I mean, this is serious. He managed to accomplish a great deal. They must have had wonderful schools in their ways. But the concept of a child going to school unwillingly and dragging himself along like a snail and doesn't want to get there, and it's an iconic concept which necessarily equates learning with something utterly onerous and distasteful. And yet, does that necessarily have to be the case? You see what I mean? I don't know. Homeschools vary immensely depending on where they are, but that's one of the things that I think just one has to try to stay away from. There's no good reason why it has to be onerous and distasteful.
Mhm.
So, but it's interesting, beautifully described that way. And then, of course, we've got the lover. And here again, I think that the Robert Conquest interpretation in the Limerick was really rather poorly chosen when he decided to use that particular 4-letter word to describe this, when the original talks about sighing like a furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. That really doesn't fit the more obvious and hydraulics of conquest, if you'd like, of Congress, if you'd like to put it nicely, that are described in the in that poem. Let's see if we've gone up or down here. Okay, I've lost it. Okay, well, I don't know where we went with this. There were just some other things in there that looked nice, and I managed to lose them all together. Let's just do it this way.
It is difficult to imagine school back then for little kids. But I remember I read a book called St. Augustine's Confessions. It's about my middle name is named after St. Augustine. So I decided to go ahead and read it. And he's in a little bit, I'm trying to think of the time, probably I'd guess 60 AD. And he was a teacher, and he used to teach a school in Rome for teenagers. And when you think about, or not teenagers, probably the equivalent of 8th graders.
Mhm.
And I thought it was very interesting because I would never really imagine a school like that. And he would talk about the kids always being unwilling to school, and they'd be. It's just very interesting when you think about it.
No, it is.
Because I don't picture it. The earliest I can think of school is probably about early 1800s, when I had that picture of kids unwillingly going to school. And
Yeah, no, it's interesting also to, although there's no one place one can comfortably find a set of these, but looking at examples of homeschooled people, and you realize, okay, well, there have been so many who had relatively little education and yet managed to achieve so much. Mark Twain, John Stuart Mill, I mean, it's one after another. And yet they did that without having to go through the traditional schooling process. And it demonstrates that it's perfectly possible. In so many ages, it was just standard that kids should learn what their parents do. And of course, it makes sense to do that, but it makes also sense for parents to realize, let's see if they can't do a little better. Well, sending them to public school is not going to make them do better.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
In my opinion, learning, it can't really be seen, and especially in public school, learning, and everyone there sees it as hard work, and it's very boring, and no one wants to really do it. If you want to learn something, you would have to actually enjoy doing it, because it's even proven scientifically. It's all how your brain sees it. So if your brain sees it one way, as, oh, this is all boring, your brain can literally get rid of all the information it took in within like 18 seconds of taking it in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you actually enjoy it, your brain will naturally put it in because you're enjoying it, and it thinks. Your brain would think, okay, we enjoy this, so there's no reason to get rid of this. We'll put this to long-term memory. So, for example, if you take programming classes, I take a lot of programming classes. There are people who don't enjoy that at all, and they don't get the grades for that because they just sit there at the computer and they just keep typing in. But if you actually enjoy programming, you could just spend time learning it. Then it's a lot easier to pick it up.
And indeed, as a programmer, you probably encountered that phenomenon. I taught for many years programming classes, and it's useful, though not necessarily healthy, to fall into that state of fascination when you're working on something, and then you look up and you see that it's light outside, but you're not sure what day it is. Okay, that doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen to programmers, and there is so much that can be accomplished that way. As I said, it's not necessarily a healthy lifestyle, but it can be a useful and it's a useful perspective to have gone through that. But it also harkens back a little bit to something that we saw in As You Like It here, when you're talking about for whom does time gallop withal, and so forth. Because the fact is, if you're fascinated with what you're doing, you pay no attention to time at all and can end up spending, 12 hours straight working on something with utter fascination and utter delight without paying any attention at all to the time. Whereas if you're a schoolboy sitting in school waiting for the bell, the time is ticking by so slowly. I mean, so indeed, yeah, it's a very good point. And how rapidly one can acquire knowledge, how rapidly one can learn a skill, it's in a completely different category altogether. If you can manage to take it out of the onerous and distasteful and put it into an environment in which it's pleasant and enticing. Okay, and of course here also we have full of wise saws. That's the other example of the word there. Okay, Connor, did you have a one that you wanted to recite?
I can recite any of them. I can recite the suite of the uses of adversity.
Shall we do that? Do you have one, Hattie Dawson?
No.
Okay, let's see what we can find.
There you go.
Is this your preference, or is there another one that you like?
No, I would like to use this. I would like to do this one.
Okay, by all means, start any way you like.
Suite of the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head. And this our life exempt from public haunts, finds tongues in trees, brooks in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. I would not change it. I really like the way that one sounds.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's also a beautiful sentiment. Because he's very accepting of his current state, and then when it changes again, he's perfectly accepting of that too.
He's very optimistic.
It's kind of funny because he's the exact opposite of Jaques.
I think that's perhaps why he likes Jaques, because he's fascinated by him, because he's always optimistic, as you see here.
That's a very
Or in
good
the
point.
forest, it could be much worse. Adversity is so sweet. Look at all these. Look at all these gifts that we have. Whereas Jaques would just rant and rant about about his miseries, and perhaps that's the reason he likes to keep him around. Is he likes? It's why he likes hearing him rail about everything that's happened, where he would almost praise it. It's just because they're they're just the opposites of each other.
Exactly. It's a wonderful contrast, the characters that put together. And here with Touchstone thrown in to sort of mix it up too, because Touchstone says, well, in that respect, I like it, but in the respect that it's private, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It gives you both sides of the issue. Excellent, excellent. This is a wonderful play, and I'm just so glad that you enjoyed it. I hope you got a chance to look through the thing. It's just a wonderful use of language, use of concepts, use of theurgy, if you'd like. Anybody? The forcing of gods to do your bidding is what theurgy means.
Oh.
And in this case, we have this god that comes in at the very end.
That's what I thought when I saw it. I said, where the heck did he come from?
I didn't know what he
As
was.
he came up there, I said, wait, where the heck did he come from?
Exactly, and so it would make sense, for example, I would have thought as a modern writer, one might decide, well, let's grab Sir Oliver Martext or somebody we already know, we'd dress him up and but no, it's we have a god come in at the last scene to wind everything up.
That was more of a why not kind of why not throw a god at the end of the scene.
The question is not why, but why not?
Exactly. And yet it's just a beautiful play. Wonderful play. Okay, let's just discuss possibilities for the future. I want to make sure I'm covering everything everybody wants to cover. I want to see your compositions and see what we can do with those. Are you feeling comfortable about them? Are they going well?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that No, I've been having internet problems, so yeah.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, but yeah, I'll try to I guess repost it again.
Okay, great. Did you
Yeah.
see the postings that these two put up there of the timed SAT essays that they were practicing on?
I'm not sure. I can't really.
Okay,
Remember.
now take a look at what they've been posting, because of course I realize SAT essay is not what you're aiming at.
Yeah.
But we looked at those, and I think in both cases, you've got something that's good, which with a little tweaking could be much better. if
I
you
just have
see
to,
what
I have to speed up my writing with the pencil.
Yeah, and I can't make any suggestions there. I'm sure my writing with a pencil is abysmal. I haven't done it for 30 years. I actually wrote a word processor because I needed something to to handle my writing for the old Atari, which didn't really even have anything like that. For your purposes, we want to put a really nice essay together. For SAT purposes, it's a different thing. It's graded differently with different criteria. But you want to put something really polished together, and you are not constrained as to time.
Yeah.
And so let's really see what you can do, but put something really polished together. You've been reading the ones in that book, right?
Oh yeah.
Because those are really great, and the only commonality that I see among them all is their use of language. They go off in different directions. They have justification or lack of justification. That doesn't seem to matter very much, but as long as they manage to express themselves well, that's really it doesn't hurt to have something to say too.
Right.
But let's work on that. I look forward to seeing it. Okay. What should we look at next?
I'm pretty open for anything.
One suggestion I had was, well, that's interesting. It looks like
So
we're
if
still
you
broadcasting, but I don't
I think it's because if you minimize I think it'll show up now.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, looks like we
No,
lost the
maybe
screen
not.
share.
Well, I hope the screen share was taking place.
Yeah, it was because when you clicked onto it, it turned off right
Oh,
there.
I see. Okay. Well, that's fine. We're bringing things to an end now. I'd like to look at other things. You brought up
Oscar Wilde. Last
I don't
week.
think you did, actually. I thought you brought up Sherlock Holmes.
Oh,
Now that's
yeah.
that's a thought too. If you would like to look at those, they are nicely put together. They're beautifully written.
I haven't read the whole thing yet, but my brother hasn't read it yet, so you could do that.
That's a possibility. I was also going to suggest possibly not Oswald. That's one of the Much Ado About Nothing. Do you know anything about it?
Nope, nothing.
Okay. The one big problem I find with that play is I can't give you the best version to look at. It's under copyright and it's not free. It's easily acquired. I really think the best version of it, the most spectacular version, is the one that Branagh made, Kenneth Branagh. Somewhere around 96, I think, it came out, something like that. But there are many different versions of it, and many of them are excellent. It takes place it's supposed to take place in Messina, which is on the Isle of Sicily. Branagh decided to set it in northern Italy instead and put it in Tuscany, which the scenery is just spectacular there. I think that was a wonderful choice. But it's love stories, or a series of love stories with a returning regiment and a number of the officers in that regiment. There's they are returning to Messina, and there's a family and a number of girls, and one of the girls is adored by one of the soldiers, and one of the girls has a history with one of the soldiers, and every time they meet, they throw barbs at each other. And those barbs are so deliciously done. And of course, what happens there is Don Pedro, the I don't remember, the royalty. He and some of the others decide we're going to get these two together, the ones who are constantly mocking each other, and they managed to make both of them think that the other one is in love with them. And it's very, very clever. There are a number of other ramifications going on. We've got a villain who comes up with things, but the dialogue is absolutely sparkling.
I can do that one. My dad might be able to even find the Reynolds version.
Well, it's important, I think, to it'd be nice to see that one, because Branagh plays the role of the soldier, and his then wife, Emma Thompson, plays Beatrice. Beatrice and Benedict are the two, and they do an absolutely incredible job. But they're not the only ones. It's a wonderful opportunity for good actors.
Okay.
And so, does that sound compelling?
Yeah. I
Okay.
can do that. I'm fine with
Let's aim at that one then. Sound good to you?
Sure.
Great. Okay, let me know if there's anything else you want to cover. Please look at the other things I've given you. I gave you another thing to look at. I forget what it was. Let's just take a very quick look here, if you don't mind, and take us back to our agenda so I don't forget things. Updated assignments here. As You Like It. Accents of Shakespeare's Day. Have you watched that?
No.
Let's do that then. I'll leave that up there. I also added Christopher Hitchens on
I
Thomas
noticed
Jefferson.
that one. I haven't seen that one yet though.
Okay.
But I did notice that was a new one.
This is entirely improvised, but nobody improvises a lecture like Hitchens. Absolutely wonderful. And he's a biographer of Thomas Jefferson. Also, they were born on the same day, and when Hitchens became a U.S. citizen, he managed to do so at the Jefferson Memorial on Jefferson's birthday, and it was sort of an interesting combination there. Anyway, we've got these ones. Have you finished those already?
No.
One word. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and work on those then. I just want to make sure you have enough homework.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Let's see you next week. Okay. Bringing our English class to an end today. That is prep English at EIE.